Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about one of the hottest, if not the hottest topics surrounding Marvel Spider-Man 2 after its shocking appearance at the Summer Game Fest last week, and that is, of course, who is the true identity of Venom in this game. Now, if you guys recall back to the showcase, Insomniac kind of threw us all through a loop when they announced that Eddie Brock would not be Venom in their game, and that they would be taking an original and fresh take on the character, and that has us all thinking about who could possibly be one of the main villains of this game, one of the biggest villains in Spider-Man's history. Who could be Venom? And in this video, we're going to be talking about some of the possibilities, theorizing a little bit, and just looking through the options to see who could be Venom in this game. But before we get into this discussion, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that is just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It will notify you every single time Andreas and I upload. Now, with all of that out of the way, Andreas, are you ready to talk about who the hell Venom might actually be in this game?
Yeah, let's do it, guys. Alright guys, so we are going to talk about some likely candidates. Now, some of these are going to be kind of off the wall. Some of these are options that we think are going to be a pretty good chance of being Venom in the actual game. And some of them might be, just kind of out of left field picks here. Also, guys, feel free to chime in the comments down below and let us know who your pick is. Who do you think Venom is going to be? And maybe alternatively, let us know if there are some, crazy off-the-wall picks that you'd love to see. But I think in the wake of Brian Intihar's comment that it's, not going to be an Eddie Brock Venom, a lot of people are starting to shift gears towards that Harry Osborn Venom, which it seems like this game has almost primed us into thinking that. It almost seems like the obvious, natural pick here, but Nick, it's not so cut and dry, is it?
No, so Harry Osborn for us is option number one. He is one of the possible candidates to be Venom. Now, we know from the end credits scene of both Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales that Harry is clearly in possession of the Venom symbiote, and it is an attempt by his father, Norman, to cure him from the syndrome that he is facing. It is a terminal syndrome. It's the same thing that his mother died from. So Norman is trying to do whatever he can to cure his son. And the Miles Morales end credit scene actually establishes that Norman is forcing Dr. Connors to let Harry out of that tank that is holding him. And I think this is where there would be a really good opportunity for Venom to completely consume Harry and for Venom to break free. And we know that from the context of these end credit scenes, just the news story that Dr. Connors has on in the background of that post-credit scene where they're talking about the Underground, the new group. They're talking about how Rio Morales was just elected city councilwoman. We know that end credit scene happens right at the end of the story of Miles Morales. So I think that given the fact we know that Spider-Man, that Peter Parker, will come into possession of the symbiote suit, we know, and it feels like it's most likely going to be directly from Harry, that Peter takes it from Harry. Just some of the dialogue throughout that scene where now the only thing that can help Harry is Dr. Connors, but he's the lizard. I think there is a good chance that actually Harry could serve as some sort of early game Venom and be more of a vessel to get the symbiote from him to Peter. I think that is how Insomniac will try to use Harry as quote-unquote Venom in this game. I think he will be Venom at some point, but I don't think he's going to be the end game Venom, the final version of Venom in this game. It is also incredibly possible that Insomniac does something similar to what they did in the first Spider-Man game, where we all thought Mr. Negative was going to be the main bad guy, but he only turns out to be the bad guy, for half the game, and the true, person pulling the strings, the puppet master, was actually Doc Ock, and it wasn't Mr. Negative. I could see them doing something similar with Venom, where maybe there isn't an endgame Venom. He is just an early game villain used to get the symbiote into the possession of Peter Parker, and that's where his story ends. But let's just assume for the sake of this conversation that we're looking for an endgame Venom. I don't think Harry Osborn is that person, because I think it would be incredibly messy to go from Harry to Peter and then somehow have the symbiote go back to Harry. That's just very messy, and I don't think Insomniac will try to tell a story like that. They're very good storytellers. I don't think they would get messy like that. So for me, Andreas, Harry Osborn, very strong candidate to be an early game Venom. I think he will be an early game Venom. I don't think he'll be the final version if there is one.
Yeah, I really agree with you there, Nick. Like you said, it's just a little awkward for the symbiote to go from Harry to Peter, then back to Harry. It just seems a little, I don't know, it seems a little almost too obvious that way. And I really would not be surprised if he was just a vessel, like you said, to get the symbiote to Peter, and then Peter will then pass it on to someone else who will be that endgame Venom. But as far as Harry Osborn is concerned, I just think it's going to be like a very early stage vessel type deal. Feel free to rebut that in the comments down below, guys. But I think that's kind of where I'm at as well. But I know that there is a large camp of people who are starting to sympathize with that and are really saying that there is a likelihood that Kraven ends up being the Venom in this game, the end game Venom in this game. Nick, what say you about that theory?
Yeah, so option number 2 here for us, candidate number 2 is Kraven ends up being Venom. And I think this is one of the stronger candidates and one of the stronger theories that I've seen about Venom. I'm not entirely sold on it at the moment, as you'll hear from a couple other of our candidates throughout the list that I think are also very possible. But I think Kraven is a very strong candidate. But this one is interesting because Kraven and Venom do have somewhat of an established but brief relationship in some of the comics, and they're not exactly friends. So even though they're both going to serve as antagonists in this game to both Peter and Miles, I don't think they're going to be teaming up as individuals. I don't think you're going to see Venom and Kraven versus Miles and Peter for the ultimate battle. I think if they are teamed up, they will be physically teamed up. It will be, Kraven taking possession of the symbiote and becoming perhaps the Spider, which is his alias in the comics. We do know from that Kraven trailer that Kraven is headed to New York City in search of an equal in what he calls the Great Hunt, and obviously everyone is assuming it's just those characters off the tablet, Peter, Miles, all of them. So it is inevitable, knowing that Kraven will be in New York, and we saw it in the gameplay trailer, that Venom, symbiote, and Kraven are going to cross paths. Now, we know that Peter is going after Kraven while wearing the symbiote suit, so it is entirely possible that perhaps Kraven is able to beat Peter at that point in time and actually beat the symbiote out of him and take possession of it, rather than our theory of Miles being the one that has that showdown with Peter and eventually gets the symbiote removed after he becomes sick of it. And I think another possibility also would be that Kraven crosses paths with the person who ends up becoming Venom or the Venom symbiote somehow and takes possession of it in that way. He does feel like one of the better candidates to end up as an endgame Venom. As Insomniac said, they wanted to bring a fresh and original take on the Venom story. However, what gives me pause about the Kraven theory is the fact that Insomniac said that it was going to be something we've never seen in the films or the comics, and there is a relationship there of Venom and Kraven, and there is a comic line where Kraven does end up being Venom. He does consume the symbiote suit. So depending on how literally you take his statement and how serious they are about that statement, how black and white that is, that could disqualify Kraven in the long run. But to me, he does feel like a very strong candidate to be an endgame Venom if that's possible. I just don't know if they're going to want to take two main villains and combine them into one, but it would be an interesting take on the character.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really interesting point there, Nick, that Brian Inahar did say that they are going to be doing Venom in a brand new way, something unlike any prior comic or movie, but they could maybe choose a same host as a comic line, but just do it in a different way. Like, I'm not quite sure the extent of his statement. Like, are they just not doing the same host as any prior comic or movie, or are they just going to do it in a different sort of way? So I don't know. There's still a lot of possibilities there, and I wouldn't really preclude this one just based off of Brian Inahar's statement, but I do completely get that point. Like there's a chance that he could be dispelling this one just right off the bat, saying we're going to be picking a brand new host that's never showed up in a movie or a comic line ever before. And in that regard, if you wanted to pick something like completely out of left field that would almost be borderline disgraceful, we could go to our next pick, which is Norman Osborn.
Now, before I get into this, I do want to say one thing about what you just said, and that is about whether or not it will disqualify hosts if they've had Venom before. And we know Harry does have the Venom symbiote, and there is a comic line, the Ultimate Spider-Man comic line. If I remember correctly, Harry is one of the original hosts in that comic line for the Venom symbiote. So, and that's clearly not disqualifying him. So maybe it's not as serious as we're saying. And I do like your take on it, that perhaps it doesn't disqualify the host per se, but maybe it just disqualifies the story of that host with that Venom. I think that is a good way to potentially look at it. So I just wanted to throw that in here. Now, getting into option number 3, candidate number 3, that is Norman Osborn. When I first thought of this, when we first sat down to make this list, I thought this one was completely out of left field. But now that I've sat here and kind of thought about it and sat with it for a little bit, I feel like Norman Osborn is actually one of the strongest candidates to be Venom at some point in this game. I actually think if you kind of sit here and think about the possibilities and how this story could go, I think this is a very strong option. Now, obviously, it feels like and it looks like Insomniac is setting up Norman for his Green Goblin arc, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't both be Venom at one point and then become the Green Goblin later on. Just because he's Venom doesn't mean he has to die as Venom or stop as Venom. He could then lose the symbiote suit and become Green Goblin, and this would be a very fresh and original take on the Venom character if that is what Insomniac is going for, and it would be incredibly interesting to see Norman Osborn be two of Spider-Man's main villains. I actually would really like to see how Insomniac would handle this if that is the direction they went. And I think there is actually a very clear pathway here to establish that vendetta that a Norman Venom would have against Spider-Man. I think it's actually the clearest vendetta that we have. And that is, just think about it. Peter takes the symbiote away from Harry, or Peter isn't able to cure Dr. Connors the Lizard. He's not able to stop him, and Harry somehow ends up dying. In either situation, in either scenario, the end game is Harry ends up dying. And then you could see Norman blaming Spider-Man for the death of his son in a total bait and switch from the Raimi trilogy, where Harry blames Spider-Man for his father's death, even though it wasn't directly his fault. I could see a very similar dynamic taking place here, and that right there would fuel the vendetta that Venom has towards Spider-Man, that a Norman Venom would have towards Spider-Man. So I think this option is actually a very strong candidate, and I would like to see it. And I think him becoming Venom and then eventually becoming Green Goblin is actually a pretty strong theory, and I would like to see it. But I do think at the end of the day, even if Norman does become Venom in this game, he will eventually in Insomniac series become Green Goblin, because they've thrown so many just bones out there that he will become the Green Goblin at some point.
Yeah, I think they've really been queuing up Norman Osborn to become the Green Goblin. I'm just a little hesitant to adopt this one, just because I feel like Norman Osborn should be the big bad in his own right as the Green Goblin. And I feel that giving him a Venom spin, it's kind of like when you combine two devices in one, you usually end up hurting like one or the other. Like when you put when you make like a laptop and iPad, or a touchscreen laptop, it's like not as good as an iPad, not as good as a laptop. It's like one of those things. Like you're gonna shove two villains into one character, so it might not be as good of one or the other of the villains. Like you're kind of watering down one of them. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I could see that. It's I don't think it's like the slam dunk pick, but I think it's a strong option. I definitely think whatever Insomniac chooses to do will be a very interesting take, and I think will be a very interesting final candidate for whoever they pick. Now, we have a couple more candidates here, about 3 more on our list. Just want to briefly go through. These are more off-the-wall picks, but we just wanted to get some less obvious candidates on the list just to spark a conversation. And that first off-the-wall candidate, I would say, is Peter Parker. Peter Parker would be a very off-the-wall pick, and honestly feels like the biggest stretch from this list. And the only reason I throw him on this list is because we do know that Peter is going to be in possession of the symbiote at some point, and it's going to be after Harry is in possession of it. So it would be interesting to see Insomniac just kind of go for it and have Venom completely consume Peter like never before, and then Peter ends up being the main quote-unquote bad guy or Venom of this game. I think that would be incredibly interesting. I personally would not love to see that because I'm a huge Peter Parker Spider-Man fan, and I really like to not see him be the antagonist of his own game. But it's not a non-zero chance, is I guess what I will say, but I think it is the least likely one from the remaining candidates we have.
Yeah, for Peter Parker, really, I think the big payoff of this game is going to be like they're almost setting up the payoff to be like that 19-inch statue that they're selling, which is going to be Peter Parker and Miles Morales taking down Venom together. And we've seen that in the concept art, we've seen it in the reveal trailer, we've seen both Miles Morales and Peter Parker Spider-Man both teaming up to defeat Venom. So this one kind of cuts against the grain on that concept, and it almost feels like that would be the ultimate bait and switch if Insomniac is literally selling a statue of Peter fighting Venom, and then they go ahead and make Peter turn into Venom. I feel like this is really like it goes against some of the stuff that they've shown us, and it kind of cuts against the grain for me. But I feel like Peter will have that oncoming threat as he does progress throughout the story, that you're going to be uneasy throughout the story thinking like, is this guy going to turn into Venom? Like, is he going a little too dark here? And I think ultimately he's not. That's just what I think, but this could definitely be possible.
Now, the next candidate we have on this list is Eddie Brock. I know we spent this entire video saying that Insomniac has assured us that it will not be Eddie Brock, and Insomniac has assured all of us in their own right that Eddie Brock will not be Venom, but it wouldn't be the first time that a game studio pulled that old misdirection trick trying to keep people subdued and away from leaks or story spoilers or any of that and just lead them in the wrong direction. So assuming Insomniac is lying, then Eddie Brock is a candidate, but I don't think Insomniac is lying to us. I don't think they would do that. So I don't think it's going to be Eddie Brock. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be Eddie Brock, but I guess until we get our hands on the game or see who the actual Venom is, it's always possible that it could be Eddie Brock, and in the same vein, it could be someone like Flash Thompson, but he's one of the candidates. And then one of the last candidates I want to briefly talk about, Andreas, is I wanted to pick someone from Miles Morales' side of the story, and to me, the most obvious pick, if we had to pick someone from his storyline, would be Ganke, his best friend. We know Ganke is involved in Spider-Man 2. He's flying that little drone thing around in the gameplay trailer. This one is a complete off-the-wall pick, but it is someone from Miles' side of the story, and it would really shake the foundation of Miles' personal life. So I think if there is someone, a candidate from the Miles Morales side of the story to be Venom, Ganke to me makes the most sense. But again, this is one of the very off-the-wall picks. For me, the key, clear-cut candidates that we have here are Harry, Kraven, and Norman, but I think just getting a couple additional candidates in there, even if they are incredibly off the wall, just to spark some conversation, is worth it at the end of the day, even if we don't think they're likely.
Well, there you have it, guys. Those are our, different options for who could possibly be Venom in Spider-Man 2. Let us know in the comments down below if you have any other theories. I'm sure there are many different options that you could throw out there and make an argument for. Maybe Kirk Connors. I don't know, like something out of left field. I'm sure you guys will have crazy theories, so make sure to share them in the comments down below. Or if you completely buy one of these theories, let us know which one you're putting stock in. If you had to bet, who from our list do you think is going to end up being Venom in Spider-Man 2? However, guys, that's going to do it for this conversation. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.